Hello, hello. Mark Atwood here. Mark Atwood Show, Adventures in the Cosmic Soup. Are you enjoying your time in this crazy realm we call Earth? Are you ready for school? I have Professor Michael here. Hello, Michael.
Well, thank you. I've not been called Professor for a while, but thank you for that.
Sorry, I talked over you then.
Oh, no, so I was going to say Brian Cox, maybe. You never know.
Oh, no. He a bad man.
Oh, Batman, good.
I had a big argument about 8 years ago with a guy that was studying underneath him at Manchester University, and he was talking about nonsense, and got really aggressive, which doesn't surprise me really when you consider the crap he's teaching everybody.
I guess it's, you have to try and defend the defensible, I guess.
Anyway, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to be back for part 4. And again, thank you. And thank you again to everybody who's written to me since part 3. And of course, it makes it exciting to do part 4 as well. So thank you to all those who took the time to ask questions and to tell me how it's affected them in a good way.
Do you know what amazes me about these talks is that if you look at them, 1, 2, and 3, they've all had like 18,500. There's been no deterioration in the numbers, which tells its own story.
I guess it's the definition of consistency, at least. But yes, it's good. It's lovely to see. It really is.
Well, the audience loves it as much as I do, and I love it because I just get to sit back and go, "What? Hey, are you serious?" I love it. So we're going to do the Book of Revelation today, right?
We're going to cover some of the main points of the Book of Revelation and also some of the main points of the Bible. And over the last sort of trinity of parts, we've covered Egypt, we've covered ley lines and grids and the Templars and timelines and false matrices. And of course, part of the false matrix, as I said in part 3, was the religious system that keeps people locked in mind control. So today, I'm going to talk a bit about the Bible, a bit about some of the characters of the Bible, some of the stories of the Bible. And that takes us briefly back to Egypt. It takes us briefly back to the control system of the Matrix.
Okay, sounds good. I've got my pen ready. I've got my note paper. Let's go.
Excellent, thank you. Well, as I said, we'll go back to some ancient times. We'll go back to some modern times, and we'll cover some religion. Christianity especially has always been a passion for me because the original Bible comes from Egypt, from the Giza Plateau, which we'll be going back to, say, briefly. And because it's a passion for me, I do like to talk about it. I was also told that religion really does rent and control the minds of the masses. So it needs to be broken down, and there needs to be an element of truth that is introduced into humanity about the subjects that are not being covered. And every time I walk past a church or a cathedral, I can't help but go in and have a look around, because there is a secret language going on that not even the parishioners or the priests even know. And that interests me, because mystery is sometimes more appealing than an answer. But of course, I also want the answer, so I get the answer. There's many secrets in society that we see presidents do, prime ministers do, pop stars do, and they are the likes of hand symbols as well. Now, when we look at the hand, that is David, because David relates to the number 14 in Hebrew, and there's 14 joints of the human hand. So David, as in the Hebrew religion, is the hand. Now, the hand represents the 5 elements. So you have the earth, water, air, fire, ether. And when we put our hands together, well, looking very, very Italian, but when you put your fingers together and your hands together, you are aligning your chakras. But of course, we have 2 hands. So what do? You put your 2 hands together and you make that shape, if that can be seen. And in that, we have the earth and we have the ether, from earth to ether, and that is the tree of life of the Kabbalah. That is the 10 emanations of the tree of life of the Kabbalah in your hands, from earth to the ether. Now, you'll see many hand symbols like President Trump and different people doing this hand symbol.
Yeah, I've seen that.
When the two thumbs are connected together, that is secretly saying the return to the ether.
Oh,
Now, you'll see underneath the womb, which is the return to the galactic consciousness, which is also the black light, the dark matter, the black light spiral, which was an initiation in the Queen's chamber of Egypt. Now, Queen comes from the word gyna, as in gynecology, and it relates to the womb. Now, the letter Q is the yoni of Isis, and the stick coming out of the Q are the waters of Isis, the goddess of fertility. So you see all that in hand symbols. A lot of it has been mistranslated, and when we see the 666, there's different levels. There's different levels to it. What that is also doing is connecting fire to the ether. You see various mudras that have the fingers connected.
Yeah.
That is fire and ether. Now, it's the same. You can do ether and earth, ether and water, ether and air, and ether and fire, which gives you the 666. The fire is the secret fire, which is Kundalini, the serpent energy, which is really at the base of the spine, but it is the divine feminine. So it is Mary. Mother Mary, and Mary, one of the meanings of Mary is sea of bitterness. Well, what is the sea of bitterness? It is the salt water of the spinal fluids at the base of your spine, where the Kundalini energy coils around. And when you activate that, you activate the Mary. The fire, the secret fire, destroys your lower chakras, which are Sodom and Gomorrah. And of course, you go through this illumination, which is the Christ. So this is Mary is Isis, and the salt water, the sea of bitterness, relates to the spinal fluids. And of course, you get the likes of your Salt Lake City and all different names from this salt. Now, the word salt gives you sal, which is salvation. It also gives you the word salary, because Roman soldiers were paid in salt. So that's where we get the word salary. Of course, when you see these biblical characters and they have halos, halos comes from the word halogen, which means to produce salt. So what it is telling you again is that is your salvation, which is an inner process, which is the Christ. When you get onto various biblical characters, again, just cover Christ in your internal worlds, your internal, so we say, evolution of ascension. When you look at the likes of Cain and Abel, it talks about Cain being empty and Abel being spirit. So Cain kills Abel, so Cain kills his spirit. When you look at the likes of Noah, it talks about the 7 chakras and the completion of the 7 chakras, which is why you have the rainbow, which are the 7 colors. When you look at the likes of Moses, Moses takes you from captivity, which is really ignorance, and he takes you to the promised land, which is an illumination of the burning bush, your inner illumination. And it takes you literally up Jacob's ladder, the spine, the jet pillar of Osiris, and it takes you from captivity to the promised land via the path of least resistance, which is known in mystic circles as the open sea. So of course now we have the parting of the Red Sea, where Moses takes the ignorant, the Israelites, to the enlightened place, the burning bush. Moses, now we'll go back to Egypt, we're told was born in Egypt, which he was, but in a cryptic way, because the word Egypt is really, in Egyptian, is Kehemet, K-E-M-E-T. But the M is a capital M, and in Hebrew, M is Mem, which is water. Moses means drawn from the water, or of the water. So the capital M in Kemet, the M in Egypt, is Moses. So Moses was born in Egypt by virtue of the name Egypt, and the capital M, which is water. We have all of these different things in relation to the Bible and what the Bible is telling us, which is really a mystical, sacred scripture, if you look at it at its correct level. So now you go on to the likes of Revelation, and people now say that we're in the end times, we're now in the Revelation. Revelation is really to reveal. But when I said that the Bible, the original Bible, is the Giza Plateau, when you look at Revelation, or the book of Revelation, it relates to the Sphinx of Egypt in different ways. It also conceals mathematical pi, because there are 22 chapters which relate to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and 22 over 7 is pi.
Mm-hmm.
Now 22 times 7 gives you 3.141, which is pi. In Egypt, pi is slightly different. It is 3.16. Now when you have the diameters of the Sphinx, which is 240 feet by 66 feet by 20 feet, you get 316.800. So when you times 3 times 1 times 6 times 8, you get 144, which relates to the 144,000. Now, Revelation is the 66th book of the Bible, and the Sphinx is 66 feet high. There's lots of correlation. Now, even when you take that to modern day soccer, football, the ball is a 22-inch sphere. There are 11 players on each side, which gives you 22. And taking it off subject just a little bit, when you have this new craze of taking the knee, and we are told it's against racism, a stand against racism, it isn't. Taking of the knee is a Masonic ritual, where they knelt over the body of Hiram Abiff, who was meant to be the first Mason. So taking the knee has nothing to do with racism at all. It's a Masonic ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you see a circle in nature, it is the appearance of pi. Even with fluid dynamics, water, even water loops, it is pi in nature. Now, nature is something that we have to overcome, and we have to overcome the elements of nature in order to become the God state. That is the Sphinx, the four beasts, which is the lion, which is your fire. You have the eagle, which is your air. You have the face of the Sphinx, which is the water. And you have the ox, which is earth. It is the four elements, the four beasts of Revelation, which is the Sphinx of Egypt. Now, but the Bible says that the Holy Spirit hovers over the face of the water. That is the face of the Sphinx. And the reason that many people say that the Sphinx is feminine is because it represents Mother Nature. That is why the Sphinx has a feminine face. So when you start looking at the word breath, the Holy Spirit, bread, the bread of life, the breath of life, spirit means breath. And when you cook and bake bread, it takes the yeast, it takes the oxygen from the yeast, and it mimics the respiratory system of the body. So bread, Lord, which means giver of bread, is also the breath of life and the bread of life. So he's talking about the same thing. People are concerned with Armageddon and what Armageddon is. Armageddon really is your own internal battle, torn between the two opposites, which is also Damascus, the road to Damascus, which means the left and the right hand path. So you have the choice, and that really is what Armageddon is. It is the internal battle of, shall we say, good over evil, spiritualism over non-spirituality. It is we are torn between the two decisions. So really the book of Revelation hides pi. It relates to the alphabet, or the 22 Hebrew letters. It relates to nature. It relates to the Sphinx, and it relates to us overcoming our animal instinct to become human. Now, once we amalgamate the five elements, which is the pentagram, the symbol of the mysteries, and the elemental forces. So you have the pentagram, which are the elemental forces, or the knowledge of. You have the hexagram, which is the knowledge of the planetary forces. 5 plus 6 is 11, which is spiritual enlightenment. So you have an overall view, and it's the 5-6 grade of mysticism. The 5, the pentagram, the 6, the hexagram. And that is your sacred number 11. And the pentagram gives you the likes of the Star of Bethlehem. It gives you the symbol of the X on a mummy, which is with the head is the sign of the pentagram. all of these different things are secret information on how to advance and elevate. It is the resurrection within. Now the circle, the 22 Hebrew letters from Aleph to Tav, or from Tav to Aleph, is the circle of resurrection. Because when you get to Tav, the 22nd letter, you go back to the first, which is Aleph, and when you get to Tav again, go back to Aleph. So it is the circle of resurrection, and that is what pi is. That is what pi is within nature, and that is encrypted within the Sphinx of Egypt, and it's encrypted within the book of Revelation. It is nothing to fear. It is telling us of our inner rebirth and inner resurrection. And that really, in essence, is what all of the Bible is really telling us. And this breath of life is really the winged angel within us. Because the wings that you see in Egypt, the wings of the bird, the wings of the eagle, are the air element. Because when it flaps its wing, it creates the air. And you see the symbol of Isis with wings. You see the angelic thing with wings. And that is all telling us of our own inner illumination and our own inner process.
So 15 years of Sunday school could have been done in 16 minutes with you.
Yes, or we could do it once a week, 16 Sundays.
Wow. Well. Right, I got a couple of questions. 3.14, the pi number, goes on forever. It's an infinite number. The numbers never stop. Is that the same with the 3.16.8?
Yeah, 3.16 is a slight variation of the Egyptian pi, but again, there's only a fraction difference, but it is still an infinite number. But as I say, 316 is encrypted into the diameters of the Sphinx. It is also, incidentally, when you look at 316.800, it is also the perimeters of the biblical New Jerusalem, which is heaven on earth. And again, that is what the Sphinx represents. It represents man's potential. The riddle of the Sphinx is man. How do you open up the Sphinx? Through sound, through sonics. So when the Sphinx, when you see the triquetra, which you can actually imprint over the face of the Sphinx, it is really a set of notes, a trinity of notes, octaves. And one of the riddles is 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and third becomes 1 as the fourth. That is talking about musical notes which open up the Sphinx as a door. And when you look at 64 keys of Enoch, and you see that the Giza Plateau is built upon an 8 by 8 grid, 8 times 8 is 64. So the 64 keys of Enoch are what the Giza Plateau sits upon, and it is a harmonic key. The same as, Solomon, the same as the harmonics of David. When you look at the most famous hymn, Christian hymn in the world, Hallelujah, when you superimpose the 5 notes, etc., of the chorus, it gives you the shape of the pentagon. So even songs can encrypt these sacred geometric shapes, which, as we said last time, are really units of sound. So it is an infinite number, and pi, as I say, everywhere you see a circle, even in your logo, there's a circle which relates to pi within nature, and the natural world, the nature, the 4 elements, and the 5th element is what we need to achieve to become the God-man, the Godhead, the God presence.
Can you describe what it looks like when we achieve that status?
Yes, you become like the builders of the pyramids, who are the God consciousness walking on earth, which is the 7th plane of existence. Now, when you look at the elements within us, which is within universal creation, if you are out of balance in any way, it will be manifest and you'll be able to see it. So, for example, if you are always hateful and angry, then your fire element is out of balance. If you are always crying and you are always emotional, your water element is out of balance. If you cannot control your thoughts, which become your words, your air element is out of balance. If you do not look after your body, your earth element is out of balance. So if you start to get any of those examples manifest in your life, then your 4 elements are out of balance. What it looks like in a balanced person is almost a flat line of emotion. So when Mr. Spock of Star Trek says, you know, I am emotionless, or I have no, which is the symbol of Shin, which is fire, incidentally. And Spock was a Vulcan, who is the god, the alchemical god of fire. So when you have a flat line of emotion energy that isn't a reaction, then you've balanced your 4 elements. And regardless of what happens to you in life, you react to it as a flat line of emotion. That is how you see what it looks like.
Well, this is the idea of being the observer, detaching yourself from, so that you're observing yourself rather than reacting to things. That's a step in the right direction, isn't it?
It is. With observation, when you walk on this so-called path of discovery, you have to hold yourself really under strict self-observation, so you can monitor, exactly where you are, where you want to be, and monitor your emotions, monitor your reaction to things. So yes, there is observation, but there's also specifically a lot of self-observation, because you need to be looking at yourself and analysing yourself and thinking before you speak and choosing your words correctly at the right time. And as I say, you must use that 4 elements in a balanced state, which is not an overreaction in any direction.
There's a really good way of learning how to do that. Start a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. And then go live, because you have to watch what you say.
Yes.
I'm just looking at the audience to see if you guys watching have got any questions for Michael. Feel free to ask questions instead of just commenting. Going back to the Cain and Abel bit, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think it was, I don't know if have you seen Charlie Freak's work?
I've heard of the name. I probably have, but it doesn't come to mind as to what that is. But I've certainly heard the name.
Well, I spoke to him a couple of years ago, and he was talking about Cain, Abel, which is where we get the word cannibal from, and one's the reptilian line, or one's the good Anunnaki side, and one's the bad Anunnaki side that Cain and Abel represent. Does that fit into any of this?
It does. The Anunnaki story for me is a metaphor, as is the Bible. And when you actually analyse the meanings of the names of the individual characters, they relate to human genetics, and they relate to the giants, which are those of a greater than average insight. So what the Anunnaki story is really telling us, Anu in Egyptian is man, so straight away it's talking about man. And the likes of Nibiru is the belt inside the Great Pyramid, the Khufu belt inside, which is really Nibiru, because it means ferryman. Now, when you put that into Greek mythology, cheating the ferryman, or the ferryman in Greek mythology, is Charon, who takes you across the river Styx. In Egypt, the river of the sky is the Duet, which is where Orion and Sirius are, and that is where the boat takes the souls across the river of the night. So the story of the Anunnaki is also a metaphor for this Armageddon within. So it fits in that way. But when you look at thou shalt not kill, which is one of the 10 commandments, of course, it's talking about thou shalt not kill your spirit. And there's certain things that kill your spirit through addiction, such as alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. These things can kill your spirit, and that is why esoterically the likes of Islam doesn't allow drinking or smoking, because it kills your spirit. So when you look at Cain, which is empty, and when you look at Abel, which is spirit, Cain kills Abel, Cain kills his spirit. He's devoid of spirit, he's devoid of the Holy Spirit. And that really is the story of Cain and Abel. So in other words, you must do things that enable your spirituality to evolve. You must walk the path, the road to Damascus, the right-hand path or the left, whichever you choose, But the right-hand path is obviously the most favoured one, because that is the path towards God, and the left-hand path is not. And that is what Damascus is. So we must do things, if you are on this path and you wish to evolve and you wish to do things in a spiritual way, you must do things that don't kill your spirit. And that is the whole story of Cain and Abel. And we must monitor that. We must put ourselves under self-observation, and we must walk ourselves in bite sizes along the so-called path of enlightenment.
So is all of life a metaphor?
Well, life really is an experience that creation wanted to experience. Its creation. It wanted to bring ignorance into knowledge. It wanted to bring unconsciousness into the conscious. It wanted to bring spiritual into matter. And the only way it could do that was creating what we see as duality, which is the effect of the cause. So the whole of life is an experience of creation. And Thomas Nagel, who's a lecturer at New York University, once said words to the effect of, you could understand every single workings of the brain of a bat, but still not know what it's like to be a bat. Now, if you are creation, if you are unity, if you are so-called perfection, then how can you grow? How can you put yourself under self-observation? How can you expand yourself if you've never experienced anything? And what we are is we are the expansion of the law of spirit, which is the character we call God, and each and every one of us are a fragment of that spirit. And we are experiencing linear time in a third dimensional vibration. But that is a temporary existence, which is what the Garden of Eden really means. When you analyze the East of Eden, which is the right side of it, East of Eden, east of the Garden of Eden, means to fall from eternity, to enter a Gan, a garden, which can be the earth, it can be a body, it is a confinement for a limited time. So you fall to earth, where you're confined for a limited time. And that is the Adam and Eve story, which is the fall of man, which represents the sixth civilization, which is the ignorance, which is sin. So sin just means ignorance. And when you step into knowledge, then you are no longer a sinner. Now, the word ignorance contains the letters GNO, which is gnosis. So therefore, ignorance is the avoidance of knowledge. That is all sin is. Now, we say that sin came into the Garden of Eden. Yes, because we fell into ignorance. So all life really is an experience. And when you step out of this life and you go to other frequencies, to other dimensions, and I've been told this by people who are there, that what you deem to be important in this world, in this life, turn out not to be.
I've had that feeling for a long time. Yeah, because we attach a lot of importance to a lot of things. This is why God asked me about 4 years ago if I was willing to let go of everything. Absolutely everything. I was like, okay.
It's a big step. It's a big step. But what do we deem to be everything? Do we deem it to be, a full set of cups, a full set of cutlery, a house, a shelter? What do we believe to be everything?
I didn't agree to let go of my hair, but look at that. Let's go.
No, I did, because I shaved it off. So, I didn't want to be scalped. But I decided to, just do that for comfort. But yes, it is, we make these decisions. We are asked upon to make these decisions. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But what we believe to be important turns out not to be important. And we put all our hopes and all our eggs into one basket. The problem with that, of course, is there's only one basket. and that can be taken away at any time. So yes, life is really an experience, and it's important really is that it adds to that experience.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't cling to these things, they have no importance. If they have no importance, we're not truly experiencing all of this. I think the hard part people have is the suffering. you know, but it's all part of the experience, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? You see, we are emotional beings, and we put these words to describe emotions that we're feeling. And emotions are really energy in motion. So what we deem to be suffering, and to us it is, because that's our perception of suffering. But again, to another, it's a perceptional thing. You know, I heard once, and I really, really liked it, that the sinking of the Titanic was a miracle for the lobsters in the kitchen. It is really a matter of perception, what is suffering and what isn't, because we are emotional, we have our experiences, we attach certain labels to certain emotions, and that's what we think. There's always multiple perceptions, there's always multiple ways of looking at an event. And of course, no one likes to feel pain, no one likes to feel emotional pain, but we are emotional beings, so at some point we are going to face that emotional pain.
Yeah. At the moment, there's quite a lot of chatter online about Enki and Enlil, with one truther saying that she's had a conversation with one of them, and there's sort of contradictory information going around about which one's the bad one, which one's the good one. But you've just said it's all a metaphor.
Enki and Enlil, the snake brothers, the Shetty, are the double helix of DNA, one of which has a positive twist and the other one has a negative twist. That is your positive and negative serpent. So you see, when you are, the universe is packed with conscious energy, and consciousness really is a vibratory awareness. So the greater your vibratory awareness, the greater your consciousness. That is why the serpent is held in such regard, because while it's on its belly, it lives in a vibratory world. That's how it finds its prey. That's how it reacts to things, in a vibratory way. So the serpent is wisdom. It is a vibratory awareness. When you have a universe that is packed with energy, a conscious energy, that can take any appearance that it wishes, that can take any form that it wishes, then you really don't know just who it is you're talking to or what you're talking to. Now, you have a lot of Christians, if I can take a Christian as a near-death experience, and pretty much every time they will come back saying they spoke to Mother Mary or they spoke to Jesus or something else. But there are universal energies out there that will give themselves the appearance that the subject expects to see. Now, if it was a Muslim who has a near-death experience, they're probably going to see Muhammad or have interactions with Allah, and so on and so on and so on, because these energies take on the appearance that they wish, based upon the belief systems and the construct of the mind of those having the experience. I've had many examples of so-called spiritual empaths and spiritual people and spiritual artists who have claimed to be able to do something. I once had one, I wrote an article for a magazine about my awakening experience, which I've mentioned, about traveling back in time consciously and seeing and witnessing the murder of a 14-year-old girl. Now, the magazine published that, and they said, oh, we know this spiritual artist who's really, really good, recommend her. We're going to ask her to go into this house consciously and draw this girl for you. I said, okay, if that's what she wants to do, but read the story first before you go into this house. And she went into the house where my wife spent her childhood, which is where the story began of this girl. And she made a drawing, came back, gave it to the magazine editors, who then showed it to us. As soon as I saw it, I said, no, that's not her. I could tell visually, I could tell energetically, that is not her. This spiritual artist, yes, it is. I never get lied to. I have my protection. I have my guides. It is her. And I said again, no, it isn't. Suffice to say, time always tells the truth. And it was a negative masculine energy that had given the appearance to fool the spiritual artist. And for a number of months after the incident, she had a bit of a problem. You can be deceived. No matter how good you think you are, no matter how good you think your protection is, there are expert deceivers out there.
Well, there are a lot of people around at the moment with huge followings who are talking as if everything they're saying is gospel and must be listened to, and that other people are no good. It's all about me being better than you. It's a minefield.
You see, anybody that requires a following in that way, really, followers should be those who are seeking information in which to take back and analyze it, question it, and have a look into it for themselves.
Yeah.
Those who demand, like we told, all of these great prophesizers and prophets of the past had followers. We're told that the God of creation demands that you worship him. Anything in that ilk is to be avoided, because nobody from a genuine place wants to be followed as a leader in that way, because it is really just fueling an ego.
Yeah.
So anyone that turns around and says what I say is gospel, nothing else matters, then why don't you go and be a priest or a Jehovah's Witness? Because that's exactly what they're saying. You have to take a magnanimous view on this and just say that nobody knows everything. We give our interpretation of universal knowledge. Sometimes we get it correct, sometimes we don't. As a whole, there won't be every aspect of what I say that will be correct, but as a general theme, what I'm trying to highlight to people is their inner greatness, their inner potential. So if you only take one thing away from what I say, it is how magnificent each and every one of us really is. And that is what's important. Not, I got bigger muscles than him, look at my shirt, I'm more fashionable than him, look at the state of those shoes. That's not a leader. That's not a spiritual leader. That's not a guru. That's not a master. That's an ego.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been telling everybody my whole life, you're all amazing. And we're all so blessed to be here. And everybody's got something.
Yes.
Everybody's got something. Yeah.
We have. We all bring our own ingredient to the cake mix, and we have different bits of the puzzle. We have different bits of information. Everybody has a voice. Everybody should be listened to. But yes, it is a minefield. And, I always say, if you only take one thing from the 4 hours presentation that I'm just about to do, it is that you are magnificent. You are divine. And you are a separation from unity temporarily.
Yeah, we're all fractals of God. I've got a few more. There are some questions here. I've written some down. You mentioned Islam and the lack of drinking specifically to avoid weakening the spirit. Now, I might have brought this up in one of our previous chats, but I'm going to bring it up again. When Muslims get down on the mat and pray towards Mecca, however many times a day, I think I always admired them. I lived in a Muslim country, and I wonderful people, and I've got nothing against anybody in any religion, apart from religion itself I've got a problem with. But I respect everybody's views. But when you look at Mecca, it's a big black cube, which is Saturn, isn't it? And then they walk around it to represent the rings of Saturn.
They do, but it's also the seven spheres to the return of God, and the cube is the material realm, and you escape the 3D cube through a hyperbola, which is a cube within a cube, which then takes you to the fourth dimension. In Egypt, they used to walk a cow 7 times around the temple, because 7 is really the key to the third dimension. So what they're really demonstrating is the route back to God. Saturn have kind of overtaken the Semitic religions to a large extent, because Saturn is the limitation of matter and Satan is the law of matter. So there's obviously a correlation between Saturn and Satan through the restriction of matter. Now it's that resistance that helps spirit and God to grow. So it is a counterpart of each other. And what you find with all the religions is at its true seed, its true origin. Every religion is talking about the same thing at its esoteric level. Where it gets lost is the exoteric level that is taught. For argument's sake, you are taught about fasting, which is nil by mouth for certain times. But what you're not taught is about the esoteric fasting, which is thou shalt not speak, they will keep the secrets quiet. So there's esoteric fasting, there's exoteric fasting. Islam and Muhammad is really the same as Jehovah or Yahweh and all of these different gods. They're all speaking the same thing. But what we have is the levels that it is being taught, that all of these religions are fighting and arguing over a set of lies. That is what is happening. But if you look at it at its genuine origin, it is all talking about the same thing, which is your own inner potential, your Christic light, which is that your fire, your secret fire within, that raises and illuminates you. That is what they're all talking. And again, when you look at the Abrahamic religions, Abraham and Sarah is the cerebral or cerebra, which is the mind. When you look at the word Abraham, Abram, just twist the letters around a little bit and you get Brahma. So you now have Hinduism brought into the Abrahamic religions. They're all talking about the same thing. You know, when you talk about Allah, Eloah, which relates to the tree, to the oak tree, the oak tree then takes you into Druidism, because Druid, the word Druid means knower of oak knowledge. Now, when you look at a tree, it represents creation, but it also comes from the word Deru, which means true. So tree knowledge is true knowledge. Now, the only part of the tree that you cannot see are the roots. So the roots represent the hidden secret wisdoms. Now, the word, the occult, because you can't see it, it's underground, you can't see it. Now, the word blaspheme or blasphemer means to uproot. So in other words, if you are a blasphemer, you are uprooting the secret knowledge and you are putting it into society. That is all a blasphemer is. So when you are called a blasphemer, and I've been called blasphemer many times, I say thank you for the compliment, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm uprooting what was secret and putting it into the public arena. So yes, I am a blasphemer. And all of these things really are, why does the occult worship black? Why is black associated with the occult? Because black is a colour that absorbs light, but it doesn't give it back out. So in other words, it takes it and keeps it. That is why the occult is black. That is why the occult is secret, because knowledge is seen as truth, which is light, the straight path. Now, light, unless it has some kind of influence, will travel in a straight line between A and B. And that is why we say we can never get a straight answer, because light travels in a straight line. But when it's black, it absorbs and it doesn't reflect it back outwards. So it is keeping the knowledge to itself. That is why the occult is black. But this knowledge needs to be given to the public and not kept by the few.
Well, I had an argument in sixth form physics about the fact that we were learning that light doesn't actually travel in straight lines. And then I turned around and said, well, why have you just spent 5 years telling us that it does when it doesn't? And then I had a big fight and I told them to piss off. It's a bit more complicated than that. Somebody asked earlier, how do you awaken Kundalini?
By breath techniques, by vibratory increase. And there's a lot of, certainly in the East and certainly in ancient Indian cultures and Hindu cultures, there's a lot about breath techniques, which is really, again, the Holy Spirit, because breath means spirit. And when we say spire, aspire, expire, conspire, as in conspiracy, conspiracy just means to breathe together. Anything we spire in it is to breathe, and spirit is to breathe. So with certain breath techniques, you can awaken Kundalini. With certain vibratory increases, you can awaken Kundalini. It is really, as I say, the serpent that is wrapped around the base of the spine 3.5 times. And it is awoken by certain inner processes of the inner world, and that is how you awaken it, by vibration, by knowledge, by breath techniques.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to many healings over the years, and by far the most powerful one was breathing. It was like an hour-long class in a teepee in a forest. This amazing woman. I was just looking her up. I can't remember her name. I'm going to dig her out because she saved her own life with breathing. Just with breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of it, there were 50 people in there. Everybody had left. I was still on the floor, shaking like this, vibrating. And it went on for about 2 hours afterwards. And it was profound.
I mean, your breath really is the winged angel within you. And
Yeah.
when you look at the biblical God, which we are told is Yahweh, Yahweh is only something we added vowels to so we can pronounce the word, but it's really in Hebrew, Yahweh is YSWH, which is the tetragrammation of the divine name.
Sorry.
But Yahweh,
what was that big word?
Tetragrammation.
You just used a massive word as if nobody was listening. Come on, what was that?
So YH is to inhale and WH is to exhale. So Yahweh is talking about breath. Now, when you look at the universe expanding and retracting, that is in certain religions like Hinduism, God breathing. We are breathing the same. We are pulsating and retracting. The heart, the breath, everything is a pulse. And what science will realize in many years to come is that what they believe to be a particle universe is not. It's a pulse. And depending upon where you isolate the flow field, depends upon whether it's an electron, a proton, or a neutron. So science has a few lessons coming down the line. But now it's all about breath. It's all about breath techniques. And you have the lion's claw, you have the B sounding harmonics of the voice, which then relates to Rosalind Chapel. It then relates to the Merovingians. It then relates to the Egyptian royalty. But breath, of course, is also how you can activate your torus field, your electromagnetic field of the body. And torus is Torah or torso, because we have that torus field. Now, the heart is the center, the generator of your electromagnetic torus field. Now, when you put a line across the heart, the middle of the heart, it is the plane of inertia. Plane becomes planet, and inertia becomes ether and earth. So it's planet Earth or the ether. It's all a mystical meaning to our own greatness, our own connection to the greater wheels.
Well, the Earth is a toroidal field, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I was speaking to someone earlier who's from a science background and saying about, and I was saying basically science has it wrong, because you have the North and South Pole, which gives us apparently the electromagnetism of Earth, the magnet. But what science is not telling you is you also have East and West poles, which is known as magneto-toroid effect. And the reason planets rotate is because the East and West poles are pushing and pulling in the same direction, which gives you a rotation. So again, science has something coming to them down the line.
I first learned about the toroidal field in the film Thrive. I think that was the first time I really understood that. And this whole flat round Earth thing, for me, is sorted. It's a toroidal field because as above, so below. Every cell in our body has a toroidal field. We are a toroidal field. The universe, so it makes sense. And the Earth is a living entity, right?
It is, and it's a conscious energy, and it talks to other planets, and the stars talk to each other, and nature talks to each other. The plants and the flowers and the grass, the trees, the animals, they all talk to each other, and everything is in constant communicano. And it is a toroid field, and again, it is the apple of Eden because the body is Eden, and the Earth is also the larger Garden of Eden, which has its own apple, its own toroid field, and that gives you base 10 vortex mathematics, which then brings into the other dimensional numbers, which are 3, 6, and 9, which then can take you into Nikola Tesla, of course. It is all there. It is all the magnificence of knowledge, but it is all telling us and teaching us and showing us how to resurrect, to rebirth ourselves.
Based upon your knowledge, I have seen ships, interdimensional spaceships. Don't know, but I've seen them. What are they? And interestingly, on the one that I saw, the big one that I saw last year, it was covered in hieroglyphics.
The ships are interdimensional travel ships. There's different kinds of ships. There is our own military that have far greater technology than they're ever telling us, and a lot of the things that we see are them. Some of the things that we see in the space are them, but not all of them. You see, what you have is portal, the skipping of dimensional travel from other dimensions, from other worlds, which is usually done at 90-degree angles. That is why ships take a 90-degree angle. Some of them are the bodies of the people in them. They are steered by the power of thought, so they can think and they can be. Some of them are your standard physicality of ships, because there's different degrees of spiritual levels. There are those that need ships to travel, as we do cars or whatever, and there are those who don't, because they are more energetic, dimensional, universal energies. And there are different versions of them. So what you are seeing is unorthodox craft, some of it from our own back technology, some of it from other worlds. That is what we're seeing. The Rendlesham Forest also had hieroglyphic writing.
Did it?
Yes, the Roswell crash had hieroglyphic writing. Inside the Great Pyramid, there are metal tablets. Metal is not from this world, that has hieroglyphic writing that tells you about space travel, their fuel, which is normally liquid light, and liquid light can be harnessed from volcanoes. They can also harness the fuel for portals. Now, when you go 980 feet down into the ground of the Great Pyramid, you are able to harness volcanic lava, which is liquid light. So there's a consistent pattern in relation to the writings. As part of Roswell, when one of the airmen actually touched the hieroglyphic writing, they were getting lots and lots of binary code downloads. And when they didn't release that for decades, but when they did and it was deciphered, one of the sentences was the evaluation of humanity. So in other words, when we talk about observation, we are also being observed in how far we are progressing by other places.
I've noticed.
Yes, and there's so many ships out there that are to be seen. Like you, I've seen them come out of portals. I've seen them in broad daylight. It's massive cigar-shaped UFOs, 3 of them, just hovering above my hometown. You know, I've seen lights in the sky. I've seen 2 parallel shooting stars that were not shooting stars shooting across the sky. I've seen things, for anybody who's seen Flight of the Navigator in the 1980s, sort of a teardrop shape. I've seen that when I went to the Channel Islands, and it literally just came over me on the beach. There's all of these different things everywhere that are in and around us all the time. You know, we are constantly looking in outer space, and really these things are in inner space. And there's just so much in the realities that we don't see all around us.
Yeah, that Flight of the Navigator was famous because the boy in the ship, the chair that he sits on in that ship, because it's a Disney film, the chair's in the paedophile logo. Go and look that up. Also, talking of films, there's a recent film, I've talked about it on the channel a couple of times, called Moonfall. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
It's worth seeing.
Moonfall, okay.
It's got a lot of truth in it. Yeah. Especially when, yeah, I won't give it away the film, but if you get a chance to see it, go and see it.
Okay.
A couple of questions here. Ageless I Am is asking, is neutrality considered the same thing as 0 point?
I guess yes. I mean, 0 point is really where there's everything. You know, when you travel at the speed of light, according to science, of course, the faster that you go, the more energy you need to maintain that speed. But when you travel at the speed of light in 0 point, the faster you go, the more energy you get.
Mm.
When you get light in 0 point burns blue. So you have the 0 point, which is really nothing, but within nothing that is everything. And you have neutrality, which is a kind of a trinity amongst the duality, which is the positive and negative. It is always in freeze. So yes, in a way, it is the point of the void. It is the point of nothingness, and that really is the consistency between the neutrality and the 0 point. So when you reach a neutrality, it's what I was talking about. You know, the flat line of emotion. That is neutrality. That is also the 0 point. But within those two spaces, there is everything and there is nothing.
Every answer's a riddle. I love it.
It is.
I know. Uh, there's a question here about CERN. Do you know anything about CERN?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so HK Very says, what's happening in CERN right now? Heard the bad guys are aiming to open a portal. I mean, people have been talking about this for a long time. We've all seen, well, a lot of us have seen the satanic rituals that they've done outside there and some of the interesting statues they have there. And it's obviously not anything to do with smashing particles together. So what do you know about it?
Well, first of all, I would argue that the perhaps isn't such thing as a particle. It's just what science tells us.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of these things are masking something else. You know, we get told that this is what's happening, and we believe it because we have no access to it. You know, the cameras that are filming it are the people who are on the paycheck. So there's a lot of sinister things going on, and knowing this agenda, it is trying to control the ley lines, the energy lines, the grid lines. It's trying to control people's minds, their thoughts, their frequency, their timeline, what dimensions they're stuck in. It's trying to prevent people from ever aspiring to anything outside of the box. What I think CERN is some kind of sinister project that is, yes, it's messing with the fabrics of the matrix. It's messing with the blueprint of creation. I think they're trying to replace the creative force with the things that they're doing. So I see CERN and smashing particles and different things as a cover up for something more sinister.
And what is that more sinister thing?
They, as a habit, like opening portals. They, as a habit, like with the power of thought, to create astral plane entities. And those astral plane entities come into the earth plane. And when they come into the earth plane, they feed off us and our energy. And our energy is what fuels the holographic insertions that I spoke about in part 3 as part of the matrix. So the sinister part for me would be attempting to replace the creative force, attempting to destroy the equilibrium, and, should we say, experiment with advanced weaponry for the detriment of all of us, is the sinister experiments that I see.
And would you say that it's ancient AI behind that?
It is going along that line. When you look at it's the NAA, which is really the negative alien agenda that is pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And of course, some aspects of that are geneticists, so they're more interested in the genetic side of things and genetic experiments. And there's other sides of that are interested in other things. But the negative alien agenda is calling the shots, is programming people to behave a certain way and think a certain way and do things a certain way. And they of course are also interested in experimentation and timelines and accessing different timelines and stopping us from accessing them. There's a real battle going on, and I do foresee these sinister experiments as being in aid of the negative agenda.
I've heard recently that star seeds on Earth are 60% crystalline. They've not noticed it, and not until they get to 80%. This is imminent. It's coming soon. Part of the ascension. Where do you stand on all that?
You see, we're all star seeds. That's the thing, because you can make it look as if, you know, Betty and Harry are star seeds, but Jim and Patricia are not. In reality, we're all star seeds because we're all from the stars. Our genetics are programmed in the cosmos. Our body is a dead star in the Orion Nebula. So we're all star seeds. We're all seeded in the stars. So I think we can eliminate all of this. Again, going back to, you know, my suit is better than yours. What I say is more valid than what you say. I'm a star seed, you're not. I think we can eliminate that kind of thinking. We can eliminate that kind of thought, because we are all star seeds. Some of us come here already, should we say, vibrationally aware, which is awake, which is a higher consciousness. And some of us are here voluntarily to awaken at a certain time to contribute to what is happening. Crystalline is a state. You know, when you look at the spontaneous combustion phenomenon, my take on that is that the individual person has gone from carbon to crystalline too fast, and it's burnt their body. And that is my take on the spontaneous combustion. And yes, we are crystalline. If you look at the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, there is a crystalline region between those two glands called the crystal palace. Now, for anybody who's a soccer fan, a football fan, you know,
it's in North London.
Correct, Crystal Palace. But that is the region between the pituitary and the pineal gland, which is a crystalline region of the brain. So we are crystalline. And if we were to turn into crystalline, then we'd be a higher frequency, we'd be more of a light body, crystalline thing. But if it happens too fast, then you get spontaneous combustion, because we are also carbon-based as well. So it is a balance between a journey or a race. And I think it is more of a slow journey in terms of that kind of thing. But we're all star seeds, you know.
What about the background characters Dolores Cannon talked about? Just before you answer that, Blair So UK Patriot, this is not pre-recorded, this is live. Okay. Yeah, Dolores Cannon, background characters, NPCs, non-player characters. If we're all starseeds, who are they? Are they all starseeds as well?
They're all starseeds, because we all originate from the same place, and everything comes from the same origin, and every branch is part of the same tree, and every piece of fruit on the branch is from the same tree. Creation, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is the same tree. It is what we see as duality, which is the positive and negative. So everything has the same origin, but everything has a different vibration. Everything has a different role to play. Everything has a different task at hand. So we're all from the same place. We're all going back to the same place, but we all have a different role to play. So we're all star seeds. We're all seeded in the stars. We're all made of the universe. The carbon and the oxygen of my body and your body is from a dead star in the Orion Nebula. Now that dead star exploded and became me, became you. And when we have a child, we call it a youngster, which is really a young star, because we are a continuation of an exploded star in Orion. How can we not all be star seeds when we are seeded from the stars?
Yeah, I've been telling my kids they're stars since they were born. They still don't believe me.
And again, you know, when you look at Hollywood and different things, you have A-listers. What are A-listers? They are A-list stars, which are common stars. You know, all of these things refer to something for a reason. I'm an A-lister. Yes, I'm an A-list star. I'm a common star that everyone can see.
What's the practical way of using this information to cut through fear and accelerate one's path to enlightenment, because that's what's going on at the moment. That's why there's so many people getting massive amounts of followings online, because they're following people that are giving information or intel. It's always like it's like a dangled carrot all the time, you know, and they're chasing and chasing and chasing. I literally don't care
Yeah.
about that stuff, because it's all, I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to do is enjoy every day with what's in front of me right now. Right. And
Yes.
I'm much happier since I've started doing that, instead of thinking, when are the ships going to take me, or when's this going to happen, or when's Trump coming back, or whatever, you know. I literally don't care anymore. But what, you know, but there are loads of people out there that are really still asking 3D questions all the time. And
Yeah, it's because for the moment that's where they are, and that is
yeah,
their frequency and that's vibration. And when they ask a 3D question, they'll get a 3D answer. So fear, you mentioned fear. What is fear really?
it's
Fear is
false
not knowing,
evidence appearing real.
but it's not knowing. It's
Yeah,
not knowing.
yeah,
And when you know is knowledge. When you have knowledge of something, there's nothing to fear. You know, when the Bible tells us that we must fear the Lord and we must fear God, what is it really saying? In Hebrew, fear is yirah, which means to know and to understand. So when you know and when you understand, it eliminates fear, because fear is not knowing. It is
mm,
ignorance, which is sin. So really, we need to arm ourselves with information, and validated true information. You see, humanity has always looked for leaders. It has always looked outside of itself to be steered. You know, like you say, when are the ships going to land on the lawn of the White House? When is Christ going to come out of the clouds on his white horse? It's not going to happen. And any extraterrestrials that are promoted by the government is the negative agenda. It is not
yeah,
a good thing. So stop calling for disclosure and start relying on yourself. What people need to do is take more responsibility. And instead of going outside, they need to go within.
mm-hmm.
Because even certain, gospels of the Bible, shall we say, talk about God is within you, or the kingdom of God is within you, the Christ in you. All of these are quotes from this really educational book, if you read it at its correct levels. But humanity has always followed people. You know, we have this character of Christ that people have to follow. We have these gods, which are really just magical formulas that we want to follow to lead us out of the darkness. But we never really take responsibility for ourselves to do that. And we can become too reliant on waiting for someone else to do it for us, and they can't. Because the Bible also says, God calls you to him. It doesn't say that he calls you to get Harry to come to him. He calls you to go to him. And it's each and every one of our own individual responsibility to get ourselves where we need to be. And of course, there are certain educators, there are certain people who will point you in the right direction and open certain doors. But when you step through that door, it is then your responsibility to start looking within and progressing yourself. And you realize, when you introduce knowledge and wisdom into your life, validated truth, there is nothing to fear. So by all means, listen to people, listen to what they have to say. Some people have been looking into this as a life for many years, so they have a right to be heard in relation to what they've discovered. But to take that information and think about it, discern it, look into it, question it, and hopefully you'll come to the same conclusions as them.
Somebody asked earlier, which one of your books should they start with?
Good question. I mean, with each of the books, it becomes more advanced with each one, and the ones that are coming out are far more advanced. I guess probably Alchemy of the Gods, because that it sort of incorporates different subjects into one. So I'd probably say Alchemy of the Gods would be a good one to read. To prepare for the ones that are coming.
I've put a link to Michael's website in the description below this video. You can find that, guys. As usual, it's been another 60, 70 minutes of great stuff for a Tuesday afternoon, especially. Yeah.
Thank you again. It's really enjoyable from this side. As I said before, it's a trinity: a host, a guest, an audience, and without any of those cogs, the wheel is unstable. So thank you again, and thank you to everyone who watches and who may comment on it.
Yeah, we're going to have to do a live show, Michael. We're just going to get the energy to pull it together. Yeah, it's a great pleasure. When you're ready for part 5, let me know.
I'll be in touch very, very soon.
All right, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.